leaders. I'm Pastor Drew, and welcome to our small group equipping night. Now, originally I had set up to have this all recorded the evening of. Sadly, that recording didn't happen, and so we're re-recording this for you so you can have access to this as a review. And our topic that we were going through is accountability. And so I really want to get a great definition of accountability out there, because really in the modern church movement, and especially what you're going to start seeing amongst a lot of North American churches, is a movement away from accountability groups. Sadly, a lot of people are feeling like accountability groups are awkward, or they're legalistic, or they just create a bunch of liars. And so what they're doing is they're abandoning this idea of accountability because they feel like they see these flaws in these groups. And I believe the answer is not abandoning accountability, but it's actually coming and addressing those flaws by creating an environment of grace, by creating an environment of mutual disclosure. And so as we begin, I want to get a definition of accountability out on the table, but here's the thing, is just know I'm not creating this from thin air. This is not something I sat down this week and tried to write down on paper. This is something we've actually had for a long time, and it's something we have in a resource called Uncommon Leadership 101. And if you haven't taken this course, I would encourage you to take this course. We offer it several times a year, and so going through this, and this is a resource. This is not just, you may be thinking, where did I put that book? I went through that class months ago, years ago. What did I do with that? And I don't want this just to be one of those resources you throw on the shelf that collects dust. You find it when you move to your next house. I want this to be a resource that you have out regularly in front of you. This should be a resource you bring with you to meetings with other small group leaders. This should be a resource you bring and meet when you meet with your group, and you kind of have it there. It's a reference manual. There's so many great tools that we've put into this. And so here's one of the things that's in there, is this idea of accountability. And here's what it's defined as. It's mutual disclosure. Accountability is mutual disclosure leading to increased obedience. Mutual. It's something shared. It's we're both doing this. I mean, I've been in too many small groups where I'm sitting down with the guys in the group, and we're about going through the accountability, and I sit down and I go, guys, I struggled this weekend, and I want to confess my sin to you guys, and I want you to know where I'm struggling, and I want you to be praying for me, and want to be holding me accountable. And they're like, we're in. I said, okay, well, what do you have to share? And they're like, we're fine. I'm fine. I'm great. That's not mutual. Mutual is this reciprocating of the accountability, that as I share, you share. And I'll go first, and then you're going to go next, and we're going to mutually share this. We're going to mutually disclose. We're going to put it on the table. Everything's out there in vulnerability, and I'm going to reveal to you things you previously didn't know about me, about my struggles, about what I'm going through. And so mutual disclosure leading to increased obedience. I think there's too many groups out there where it comes to the accountability time and you disclose everything, but it doesn't actually lead to any change. And I come to the group each and every week, and I sit down and I just throw up all of my struggles and throw up all of my sin, and I feel so much better when I get back in my car, and I'll come back next week and we'll just do it again. And it's this mutual disclosure that doesn't lead to any heart change. But accountability, what we're talking about here, is mutual disclosure that leads to increased obedience. Here's the passage I want you to look at. Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. Here's what it says. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. But keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. And bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor. For each will have to bear his own load. I love this passage because what it brings out, this idea of we're coming alongside each other and we're bearing these burdens together. I don't have to figure this out on my own. And this is true for even you as a small group leader. That as you carry the burdens of those in your group, you don't have to carry them alone. And one of the things you're going to start to sense is that this care that we have here happens within community. And we're restoring one another. But we're also watching out for ourselves. We're also bearing our own burdens. We're also recognizing that I have to do my part in this as well. And so there's this mutual interaction that happens. Here's how it works. 4 things. Here's how it works. First one, ask good questions. When you get to that breakout time, when you come to that interaction time, you're guys with guys, ladies with ladies, you're sitting down, you got to start asking good questions. Because typically the first thing that person puts out on the table, typically the first thing that they share, that's not the primary thing. There's more there. It's a layer that needs to be revealed. And yet so often we spend all of our time preparing for the biblical discussion of God's Word at the beginning of the small group and really don't spend a ton of time thinking about that accountability breakout time. And one of the things I challenge you as leaders to start doing is, as much as you're preparing for the discussion of your study, the discussion of God's Word, the discussion of the sermon, whatever it is you guys are going through as your study, as much as you spend time preparing on that, I would encourage you to spend just as much time preparing for the accountability and breakout and thinking about, what question do I need to ask Mike this week? And what question do I need to ask Bill this week? And what question do I need to ask Susie this week? And I got to ask them a question, and I want to think about, how do I get to the heart of this issue? Because I want to ask good questions. I'm not going to come with my accusations. That's easy to do. Well, don't you see your problem? I see your problem. Everyone here in the room can see your problem. We can all see the problem. Why can't you see that? Accusations tend to harden the heart. Instead, coming with good questions that prick the conscience, and they draw that heart out. You start to draw that out through these questions of, I will help me understand that. Tell me what you mean by that. Give me more of an understanding. I hear you talking about your anger. I hear you talking about your selfishness, your pride, your greed, your lust. I hear you talk. Help me understand what you mean by that. When does that happen? How does it happen? And dig into that to understand, to get a better grasp of it. Ask good questions. Secondly, respect confidentiality. That as that group begins to share, creating an environment where they feel like there's confidence in this time together. There's a confidence in you as a leader, that I know I can trust you with this. Now, confidentiality has parameters. Confidentiality isn't this blanket that covers everything, and it's just, I can share whatever I want, and you can't share it to anyone else, and you can't, that's not how it works. Here's how confidentiality works, is I will not share this. First of all, I won't share this without you knowing. So if I'm going to share this outside of the group, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to do that. And secondly, I'm only going to share it with those who are a part of the solution. And so those are 2 of the commitments I'm making that should give you confidence in our time together. This is a great opportunity in this time of year, as we get these small groups started, to review the small group contract, to review the small group covenant. You're going to find that in your small group Uncommon Leadership 101 material. You're going to find it online as a resource. And so check out that covenant, that contract, review that. And then the other thing is, whenever you get a new couple, a new individual in your group, review the confidentiality. Hey, let's just remember, this is what we're all about. We want to have confidence with each other here. We want to feel like this is a safe place to be able to share and communicate what's going on in our lives. Ask good questions, respect confidentiality. Here's the third thing. Model it through self-disclosure. Here's what I mean by that. You go first. I don't know if you've been a part of a small group where you felt like this, but there's times where you feel like, I'm the only one really sharing. I'm the only one really putting anything genuine out on the table. Am I the only one that's really struggling with sin? No. But you're the only one sharing, and I'm going to go first. I'm going to put myself out there. Whether or not it's mutual, I'm going to start here. And I'm going to make myself vulnerable, and I'll be the first to admit that's really, really hard. And it's really, really scary to put yourself out there and to not know if anyone else is going to participate in this. But I'm going for more than just that surface level of just share the facts. I'm going for more than just authenticity. Because authenticity is just we sharing our feelings. I feel hurt by this. I feel sad about this. I feel more than just authenticity. More than even just transparency. Transparency is I'm willing to share my failings with you when you ask. I'm willing to share the places where I have shortcomings, but only if you ask me about it. I'm going for vulnerable. I'm going to self-disclose some of my failures. I'm going to self-disclose all of my failures. Guys in my small group, they're going to know what's going on in my life. They're going to know my struggles. They're going to know my sin, and they're still going to love me. They're not going to leave me where I'm at, and I'm going to start. I'm going to go first. Here's the last one. Ask good questions. Respect confidentiality. Model it through self-disclosure. Here we're talking about accountability here. Expect reciprocation. One-way accountability One-way accountability doesn't work. Member to leader or leader to member, it needs to be this interaction that happens, this self-disclosure. Everyone in your small group is a sinner. Everyone in your small group needs a Savior. Everyone in your small groups needs to be reminded of their identity in Jesus Christ every week. And if they're coming to the group and they're sitting there and saying, I'm fine, I'm okay, it's nothing's going on, I'm not struggling, you got to say, okay, you're not reciprocating. And I know there's more there. I know, you tell me, you might be doing better than I am, and that's okay. But I need to know, how do I lean into this? How do I pray for you? How do I support you? How do I bear your burdens, as Paul says to the Galatians? How do we help you? Because maybe you're the one that's the spiritual one that's restoring us. But we need you to come alongside us. And so there's how it works. Let's go through these 4 things. The heart of accountability. The heart of accountability. I love this. This is so good. I try to keep this as just a sheet that I keep in front of me during my accountability time. The reason why is because it keeps my focus. Focus more on Christ. This is number 1. Focus more on Christ than on someone's sin. It's so easy to just hone into that person's confession of their sin and to see their pride or to see their greed or their lust and we see it and we're going to point at it and we're going to deal with it and we focus so much on their sin that Christ never comes into the equation and coming to the person and saying, here's the thing is, you know what? That sin in your life, Jesus Christ is jealous for your attention that you're giving to that thing. He loves you, and He's jealous for all that time and all the energy and all you're seeking pleasure from that thing, and He wants to give you that pleasure. And so bringing that conviction and hope rather than just condemnation and shame. The person can drive away from my small group and they can walk away with a sense of, you know what, I'm not going back there because I'm pursuing Jesus Christ this week. My eyes are fixed on Him. And that's what I want them to be able to leave with. Not a sense of, man, I stink, awful sinner, I can't believe that condemnation and shame. No. Focus more on Christ than on someone's sin. Here's the second thing. Focus more on identity than on someone's obedience. We're not here to just change behavior. It's not just about a behavior thing, that we do this because I'm supposed to do this and I'm going to change this. And I saw this too often. I spent some time working with AA groups back in seminary. One of the sad realities I saw when I was interacting with these AA groups is you would sit there and they'd go around the circle, and I've been sober for 6 months and we cheered, and I've been sober for 2 months and we cheered, and I've been sober for a year and we cheered, and then the meeting would be over, they'd all get up, they'd walk outside, and they would smoke cigarettes like a fiend. And I was like, what's going on here? Well, the reality is they'd replaced one behavior with another. And too often that's what happens in our accountability times when we become so focused on the behavior. You just need to stop doing that. You just need to stop it, and then what we do is we find another thing to replace that, instead of coming back to what's the cause of this? What's the heart behind it? What's the identity behind it? It's more about who you are rather than what you did. And it's reminding that person that, again, they can walk away from my small group remembering, I'm a child of God. I'm a son of the Most High. I'm a daughter of the King. And if they can walk away with that sense, is that as a son of God, as an adopted child of His, I don't act that way. I don't live that way. This is how I live in power. I live in victory. More on identity than on someone's obedience. Focus more on Christ than on someone's sin. Here's the third thing. Focus more on gracious exhortation than on someone's failure. This is one of the things I love about Galatians 6 here, is it says we're doing this restoration in a spirit of gentleness. Spirit of gentleness that comes. I'm helping this person move forward, not just away from something, but helping them move towards something. Too often we're focused so much on our past and your failures, and I can't believe it, look at all of this mess, and rather than bringing them this gracious exhortation, a word of encouragement, and then this, focus more on pursuing Christ than on avoiding sin. Instead of just going after the put off, what are we putting on? And encouraging people to come to a place where they're abiding in Christ through a meaningful time in His Word, meaningful times in prayer, and we're going to go alongside you in this, and we're going to pursue Christ together. And so that's the heart of accountability. Hopefully, as you continue to process through this and think through this, you're going to start to see how you can really use this accountability time, whether you have 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour with the men or the ladies in your group, that it's so intentional that I'm going to take this time and I'm focused on this person, and I'm going to remind this person your identity in Jesus Christ. I'm going to remind this person of their hope in Him and what it means to abide in Christ and what it means to live in victory because you're His child, and bringing them back to that they don't walk away with just another list of things for them to do or another group of barriers or walls to keep them from falling over the edge this week. But that they're so fixed on Jesus Christ that falling over the edge is not even an option. So I want you to really challenge you to take this accountability time this week and think ahead. How can I make that accountability time, how can I make it about Jesus Christ this week? And what are some of the questions I can ask that can drive the person towards that? How can I create a setting where that's the case? So I encourage you to do that. Take out your Uncommon Leadership 101. Review those pages there on accountability in the study. For your reference, that's page 56 is where that starts. And just go review that and make sure, hey, how am I doing with our accountability time? Well, right now, I'm going to bring up Pastor Jeremy Oliver. He's the pastor of our Biblical Soul Care Ministry. And one of the questions that comes up is, what do I do when the accountability isn't enough and there's more care that's needed for that person? What do I do when they need soul care? And he's going to talk to that right now.
So far as we've seen the importance of accountability and how to really walk the minefield that can come with it. When we deal with real lives, it can get messy at times. But what do you do when someone brings up an issue that really needs more help? Where do you go? What do you do? Let's say you begin working with a person and you're wondering whether this is something you can handle on your own at all. You're not sure if you just need direction, or maybe you need to hand this off to someone entirely who can give them more intense support. What's beautiful about the concept of uncommon community is that not only do we want our small groups to come alongside people and create this uncommon culture, but we have uncommon resources that we want to offer you from a leadership perspective as well. What we have here is a community that we're trying to cultivate where we have tools. We want to help you as you help your people. As we think about this, there's two major tools that I want to highlight for you. One of them you're probably very familiar with. If you remember Uncommon Community 101, this was brought up there. It's the SOS. Now the SOS, if you remember, it's an acronym. It stands for 3 different areas that we need to look at in a person's life to see how intense the issue is in each of these areas and then seek to apply it to them. First off, we've got severity. How difficult is this situation? So maybe you have a guy that comes to your small group and he says that he's struggling with pornography. Okay, that would make it a little bit more intense issue. So on a spectrum of 1 to 10, maybe right off the bat you say, well, maybe this is like a 5 or a 6. Now, if you find out that this is something that hasn't been going on for a long time, maybe it's something that he conquered in the past, he's had people involved with it, he's overcome it, he's transformed, and he fell back a little bit, but it's not this deep-rooted sin issue, that may be something that your small group can handle. But what if he comes in and he says, my wife found me looking at pornography, and there's this whole world of sexual sin and enslavement to sin that's been going on for years. That would be a much higher severity that's there. Maybe you're looking at an 8 or a 9 in that case. And that's something where you look and you say, okay, this is something where I'm going to need some extra help. So we've got severity. Next we've got ownership. How willing is this person to own this issue? Again, if they come in and they're brokenhearted, they're repentant, they're already seeking to bring changes, maybe they weren't even found out, but they just want to come out from hiding. They want to come out from darkness into the light. That person's going to be very low on the intensity of that situation. They're owning it. They're willing to work through it. They see their part in it. They want to move forward. Or let's say you have somebody come in that they've been a victim of a crime in some ways. And they're really seeing God involved in the midst of it. And they're seeing that God is working in their life. That's going to be a lower ownership issue that you're going to have there in comparison to somebody who denies it. Let's say we go back to the guy that's struggling with pornography. And he comes in and he says, yeah, I've got all these sexual sin issues that are going on, but this is something that all guys struggle with. And I just got tripped up here. And, my wife's blowing this out of proportion. This isn't as big a deal as she makes it out to be. And what about all these issues my wife has and the reason that I'm struggling with this? It's not much ownership that's going on. It's going to be higher on the spectrum, maybe an 8 or a 9 in that category. And then we've got support. What kind of support do they have around them? Is this a person that has relationships in their small group, men or women, depending upon their gender, walking alongside them, helping them in the midst of their struggles? Are they open? Are they willing to share? Are they vulnerable? It's going to be a low severity issue in the area of support. Do they have family around them that's godly that's going to help them? Or is this a person that's isolated? And maybe all those that they have in their lives that are going to be a help to them are those who are not going to give them a godly perspective. That's going to make a bigger, higher priority issue that's there. Now, I know I'm throwing this out to you, this idea, this SOS, and we've talked about this, and it can seem almost daunting and scary. And here you are as a small group leader, and you're like, all right, not only do I have to lead this group and have to prepare to teach, now you're wanting me to shepherd them and take them even further in this. All I want you to see is this is a tool that can be used. If you just pick up the phone and say, hey, Pastor Jeremy, Pastor Drew, or call your coach and say, I've got this issue that's going on and I'm not sure what to do. We're going to say, well, let's walk through this together and let's fill out this SOS. And we're going to help you navigate through this issue with this person, or say, yeah, this is really something that we need to get into our corrective soul care, what often people call biblical counseling. We just want you to know that we're there to support you. We're there to be a help to you. You're the front lines of care, but we're that support that's coming in behind you. You can call in for reinforcements behind you and help to really bolster you and be a help to you. So that's the first issue that I want to bring up to you, is the SOS. The second is the soul care referral. How does somebody get soul care? Somebody has an issue that's going on in their life, and they're like, I really think that we need to get those of the counselors in the church involved in this particular situation. What do we do? How do they get there? Well, that's going to come through you. And again, we're going to walk you along through this. Now, why? Why does it come to the small group leader? Why can't somebody just walk up to me or to Pastor Drew or to somebody else and say, hey, I want counseling? We want to make sure that person is connected to your small group, that you know what's going on. What we want is we want for them to have community, that uncommon community involved in their life, walking along with them in this process and plugging back into that community life after they go through this issue. And sometimes you need people to walk along you. One of the things that we employ in our biblical counseling, our corrective soul care here, is advocates. And often that'll be another strong, solid couple, maybe somebody from the small group that's going to come and go through this process with them. And just be a strong, godly couple or individual that's going to help them walk along in this. And the small group can be a big part of this. And the other reason that we want to do this is we want you to know what's going on in the lives of your people. If somebody comes to me and they say, hey, Pastor Jeremy, I want soul care. I need counseling. I've got this issue that's going on in their lives. I'm going to pray with them. I'm going to encourage them in the midst of that situation. But one of the things I'm going to challenge them is, have you talked to your small group leader about this? And if they haven't, what I'm going to tell them even further is you need to go and talk to them about this. I want you to be the gatekeeper to allow this person in to get further care that may be needed there. Sometimes you'll find people that they may not need that intense soul care. It may be a discipleship issue. Other times it may be more intense, but again, I don't want them to live an isolated life where no one knows what's going on, can hold them accountable, can help walk alongside them in a difficult season of life. And then also, what it does is that it allows people to see the importance of community. That their small group, we are a church of small groups, and we want that small group to be such a huge part in their life. So as we look at all this, we talk about the concept of SOS. We talk about this idea of the soul care referral. The big picture that I want you to see is that we take community and small groups seriously. We want to be a resource to you and your small group, but we in no way want to undermine what you're doing there. We see ourselves as coming alongside and supporting the small group rather than competing with or over the small groups in any way.